was like 15 years of my life where every single picture during that time, I can tell you exactly how much I weighed and what diet I was on at the time, because that was like my only focus. Struggling with not really allowing myself to eat everything that I wanted. So I was more preoccupied with food, and I cooked a lot. But I didn't cook in a fun way. I was cooking, like trying to make things low calorie and like doing different versions of recipes that were it just wasn't fun. So I actually, ironically, have more fun cooking now than before, because nothing's off limits and I make food that actually tastes really good. Yeah, I think it tastes good. Hi lovelies, today we're gonna cook and chat. Nope, that's not the one. Hi lovelies. Today I'm going to show you what food freedom can look like, and I'm going to answer some questions from you as I go. We're going to cook some food. It's pestle and mortar time, baby. No, that doesn't go in there. The other day I found a little Tupperware that had cheese in it, and it was so moldy. So obviously I absentmindedly did that and like put it back in the cupboard. I was like, this is so gross. How is your eating and other new nuggets of wisdom? That might be too many chimes. Obviously, that's a lot of green stuff there, which makes it look like I eat super nutritious food all the time. I'm doing this just because it's the most aesthetic. I do not eat salads every day, just for the record. But it looks pretty, so we're doing it. Before I get started, I'm going to choose the first question. I haven't actually read these yet. Someone else has written them out for me. What did you do to become less insecure and accept your body for how it is? One of the biggest things that I did when I was trying to improve my body image is, because there was always a fault, right? It didn't matter how my body looked. There was always something which could be improved in my mind. If that was the way that my mind was set up, there was always another flaw, as it were. This is relevant no matter how someone's body looks. I want to make that caveat. I practiced good body image. So I took all of the things that I felt the most uncomfortable doing, like wearing color or wearing a tight top if I was bloated, and I just started ticking these things off. So days that I was bloated, that was my cue to go to the gym in a really, really tight, wearing a crop top, and I just took the power back into my own hands with it, and I practiced. I had this list of if I were thinner. I call it the if I were thinner list. And on that list was all of the things that I was waiting to be thinner to do, right? It might have been getting my hair done, going and doing my nails, wearing tight clothes, wearing color. And I just wrote all this stuff out and I rated it from least comfortable to most comfortable. And then I just started ticking these things off. And that massively helped. Nice, I have to wash my vegetables. Otherwise it gives me the ick. I used this knife to open up a cardboard box the other day, and now it's a little bit blunt. I didn't know that would happen. We are making a green salad. So beans, green beans, asparagus, literally my favorite vegetable in the whole world. I wish it didn't cost so much money because I would eat it day in and day out. Roasted courgette, and then mint and chives and basil, because I've had this growing for a few months now. It's time to use some of this. It's starting to get flowers on it. And then feta, bit of lemon, some salmon, really easy. But it should be really good. And I can read another question as I'm cooking and answer as I'm cooking. Okay. Did your parents control how you ate as a child? I mean, in the way that this is probably meant, this question, no. They weren't super controlling in terms of, I always felt like I was being watched and having food off limits. My parents were always really big into nutrition and health and home cooked food. And we were allowed sweets and chocolate and cake. We were allowed those things. they weren't a free-for-all. You know, we had this goodies cupboard, which my siblings will also remember, where all of the like chocolate and biscuits and cakes were, and cereals. And I remember that we weren't allowed to just willy-nilly go into there because we'd get into trouble. But we were allowed all foods. If we were hungry, we were allowed to eat. It didn't matter the time of day. And one thing that my parents did not do is force us to finish everything on our plate. I always wanted to. I always loved food, but that wasn't forced. So I'd say, no, I don't feel like my parents really controlled the way that I ate. That's not something that I remember feeling like food was scarce or anything like that. I do, however, remember wanting to eat more cakes and biscuits than I was allowed to. We were allowed those foods, but I remember it never quite being enough. I had a massive sweet tooth and I was always on the hunt for finding those types of food, and I was sneaky with it. Not because my parents were controlling with it, but because I was a massive emotional eater when I was younger. We are now getting the heads off these beans, which is one of the most difficult tasks in cooking. I know, it's a really impressive skill. Actually, one thing that I usually do, I can't do it this time, so I'm paying attention, but I like do this with the beans and then cut through like that. There's a little cooking tip for you, but I didn't do it this time. Hold on. This is so silly. She's no Gordon Ramsay, honestly. Ta-da! So silly. Do you know, I don't have that much time for cooking at the moment. Sorry, that's not true. It's not a priority at the moment to cook. There's always enough time. But so when I cook, I really like it to be an event, you know, because otherwise I just make really, really simple food that's like really quick to make because I'm prioritizing other stuff. So when I cook, I want to make like really good food, really interesting food. I love colorful food. I love color when I'm cooking. When I go out and eat, the more color, the better. You know how some people don't think that a meal's complete without meat? I have that about vegetables and salad. Because of all of the herbs, I'm not going to put any spices on them, just some olive oil and salt. I'm going to put the salmon in now as well. I feel like salmon's got way more expensive. I feel like everything's so expensive these days. So I actually have this salmon, but I didn't get it defrosted in time. This salmon, sockeye salmon, this stuff is so expensive now. It's so expensive, but it's so unbelievably good for you. This is the best the most nutritious type of salmon that you can get. I find it dry. I don't think that it tastes the best, but it's just so packed with antioxidants, which might surprise people, and omega-3s. It's really high in them. So I get these as like to have once a month to support my brain without hurting my bank account too much. And I always get olive oil in a dark jar because otherwise it kind of destroys the oils if it's in a clear jar. It's more expensive, but nutritionally speaking, it's preferable. So I do splash out on that one as well. Do you remember the Himalayan salt era when everyone had Himalayan salt? No? I got given this gift, which was the most hilarious gift I was ever given. It was this giant chunk of Himalayan salt and a little grater, like grate, and it came on a stand. It was the most ridiculous yet beautiful gift, and I was like, I'm never ever going to use this. And I ran out of salt one day, and there I was just like with my grater and my giant rock of Himalayan salt. Like, I didn't choose this life, I promise. There was years and years and years where olive oil scared me, or oil in general scared me. That was when I was, afraid of eating too much and counting calories and all that stuff, and really struggling. And I just saw oil as wasted calories. Thought, well, why not just fry in water? You don't need to add oil to it. And I really don't miss those days because oil, it just makes things better. Right, now I will forget about those. So let me try not to. Okay, next question. Have you struggled with weight gain after releasing restriction? Have I struggled? Even the way that that's phrased, right, it says a lot. Have you struggled with weight gain after releasing restriction? Like, weight gain is like a negative thing. But that side, did I experience weight gain after releasing restriction? Yes, I did. And I think that's really common. And did it freak me out at the time? A little, but I was prepared for it. I was so done with restricting, and I desperately wanted a healthy relationship with food. And I accepted that I would gain weight, and I got to the point where I rather have been bigger but not struggle with food anymore than to be smaller. And that was a really big deal to me at the time, because I didn't have good body image when I released restriction. So to get to that point was a really significant deal. But I am so glad. Now, for me personally, my weight went up, it stabilized, and then it started to come down. And I've been weight stable now for a couple of years, but that's my experience. Some people gain weight and they stabilize there. Some people's weight doesn't go up when they develop a healthy relationship with food. Some people's weights go down. Some people do this, it really depends. And so what I say to clients is that if you're struggling with disordered eating and you are considering gaining a healthy relationship with food, also you'll need to get on board with the improving body image side of it, and assume that you will gain weight and stay there. And if you can wrap your head around that, then it's just a win-win situation. Because the other thing about that, actually, which is important, is if when my weight started to come down, I got excited about that and was like, oh, now I'm more confident, now I like myself more. If that had been the case, then I wouldn't have continued to develop a healthy relationship with food. I was so prepared for weight gain that mentally I handled it okay. Was I really happy about it? No. But was I accepting of it? Yes. And to be honest with you, because I was suddenly allowed to eat when I was hungry, eat as much as I wanted, and seeing my appetite start to balance out, that part was so exciting to me. And I was so relieved about that. And I was so happy to be able to go out to eat and just not worry about food in the same way, that I took it. I was like, yeah, okay, if the payoff is that I'm going to be bigger, like that's the worst thing in the world, but I get to enjoy my life with freedom, I would have taken that deal all day long. I didn't know that I was going to end up losing weight over time, and it wouldn't have made any difference. I would have done it regardless. I think a lot of people gain weight because partly because disordered eating and ignoring hunger cues can raise our physical appetite. So a lot of people with disordered eating, they don't trust their bodies because their appetite is actually higher than other people's. But the incorrect assumption is often made that, oh, I'm just naturally hungrier than other people, when in fact, it's a really common side effect of restricting. So I think people gain weight because their appetite is actually higher than where it's going to balance out, and partly biological, just from a biological standpoint, it's a really good idea from our body, if we're constantly exposed to what it perceives to be a famine, it's a good idea from our body to try to promote fat gain. I think if our bodies didn't do that, then we probably wouldn't have survived as a species. So when we're kind of restricting, so much, or just ignoring appetite cues, more often than not, we're just teaching our body, hey, it's a great idea to lay down some extra fat, given the opportunity. It's a great idea just to lay down some more, and then it can take a while for that to balance back out. You hear people say, and I've said this, if I even look at a slice of cake, I gain weight. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the people who say that are the ones that have been on various diets for years. And they're like, how come she can eat cake or eat pizza and stay weight stable? It's like, well, maybe because she doesn't ignore her appetite cues constantly, But you can see the trap that people get into. So they start dieting, their appetite goes up, and then they fall off the rails, and then they gain weight rapidly, and then they're like, it start ignoring hunger cues again, and the whole thing just goes around and around, and it can escalate over time until someone's absolutely starving hungry all of the time, and they're gaining weight on 1,400 calories. Now we're going to put the beans and the asparagus in the oven. If this is done. Right, we'll definitely need to keep an eye on this one because these beans will burn so fast. If you know, you know. What is this? It's for avocados. Avocado Heart hearts. It's genius. Another stocking filler from my dad. He's just great with them. No, that doesn't go in there. Next question. Currently laying in my bed after binging again. I'm feeling bad. I'm trapped in the spiral and really want to break through. How can I shift today? Oh man, I have so much empathy for this because when I was binge eating all of the time, it's horrible. You feel like you can't ever stop. You feel like there's no way to get out of it. And I remember making a video to myself after I binged, and I was crying, begging my future self to not do it, telling myself, you hate this feeling after you binge, please don't do it. And it's just, so I have a lot of empathy for that. And I think if I could go back to myself then, as I was crying into the camera, what would I say? I would say that you're not naturally a binge eater. It can really feel like that, but you're not. It's not something that's happening to you. It's something that you're creating, but you don't know how, and you don't realize that you are. And first of all, you can live without any urge to binge. And it's not going to come from a place of force or willpower or begging yourself not to. So to shift today, having the urge to binge is a mixture of typically physical things that need to be balanced out. If you've got an exceptionally high appetite and high cravings, that's going to need to be balanced out. You can't fight those for the rest of your life. You just won't win that battle. And then there's the psychological component to it, the thought patterns around food, the perspectives that you have around food, that will probably need to change. The emotional attachment to food and will likely need to change, and body image, typically for most people, if they're also dieting because they're trying to lose weight, that will also need to be addressed. You can't get out of binge eating and hold on to negative body image. You just can't do it. Aside from me saying it's not your fault and that you're not naturally a binge eater, I think the most helpful thing I could say, even though it won't change things immediately, is be less judgmental and more curious. Instead of asking yourself, why have I done this again? Why am I doing this to myself? Ask it in a different tone of, interesting. Why do I have this urge to binge and other people don't? Why is that? And start learning. Learn. Stop trying to rely on willpower. And just start learning about the condition and all of the things that contribute to it, and be patient and just be curious and go in with the trial and error. You're not going to stop binge eating overnight. having no urge to binge is going to take some trial and error. It's going to take a lot of learning, but you can do that. So be curious, not judgmental. Oh, it really gets to me sometimes, some of these questions, because I wish I could just reach into the other side of the camera and be like, it's okay, it's going to get better. I have a lot of empathy with it. It's horrible to be stuck in it.
Hi, lovely. If we're just meeting for the first time and you're not familiar with my work, then I help women with disordered eating, binge eating, emotional eating, yo-yo dieting to develop what I call a normal and healthy relationship with food. And if that's something that you need help with and you haven't already seen it, then I have made a 50-minute lesson, which I highly recommend that you check out, where I explain an overview of how to develop a normal and healthy relationship with food if you're currently struggling. And I hope that's of help to you. Okay, back to the video.
Okay, what's next? Let's make the herbs next. Let's make the herbs. Is that something that you do? Let's make the herbs. It's a very special day today because I am going to be using this basil for the first time since I bought it. And I've been growing it for months, and none of my friends or family have been allowed to touch this basil for about 4 months. And today's the day that we're going to use some of it. So it's a special day. Look, have you seen that it starts to grow these little flowers on it? That's when you know it's time to start using it. It needs to be repotted. I am curious about how big basil will get if I repot it. I'm going to look that up actually. I can't, my laptop's not here. I am curious how big basil gets if you keep repotting it and what it looks like if it keeps growing. Have you ever seen a giant basil plant? No, me neither. It's like when the first time I saw a pineapple plant, and that just blew my mind. Have you seen how pineapples grow? Really weirdly, not how you would expect. They grow upside down out of the ground, like on a stalk. I thought that was hilarious. I was like, what is that? I went to go get a mojito the other night, and he's like, yeah, absolutely, we'll do a mojito. We do need to let you know though that we don't have any mint. I was like, what are we doing? Oh my God, that's so good. My dad at his house, he lets some mint start to grow in his garden. And anyone who's ever let that happen will understand that it just takes over. And so he has so much mint. His garden smells fantastic, but he has mint everywhere. And anytime I go and see him, he's like, please, will you have some mint? Do you want to make some mint tea? I'm like, stop trying to palm your mint off to me, Dad. I think I should have lived in Greece because their food, or Mediterranean food is just my absolute favorite. My favorite food is probably loads of Mediterranean food, and then I'll get a craving for sugar, craving for something sweet, like something kind of rich, and then like a chocolate dessert or a sticky toffee pudding, and that's perfect to me. I often feel like I need a balance of fresh and richness. So if a meal is too rich, then I'll put on like loads of vegetables on the side or salad on the side. And if a meal is too fresh, I just don't find it satisfying. So then I need something rich to go along with it or afterwards. Everyone's different. And mojitos, of course. A wine or a mojito, never complain about them. I'm actually, full disclosure, I was mildly hungover when I woke up this morning. I was like, now I'm getting older. The hangovers, they're getting me when they didn't used to get me. Had a couple of glasses of wine and then it's like, why are you going to pay for that now, Rachael? It's the cookie day. I was like, I've got to perform. I've got to talk. So I've had 4 coffees. It's all about balance. I was walking home last night after having a couple of glasses of wine. I was so hungry, so I didn't get to have any food. And there I was with like my massive bag of crisps and chocolate shortbread walking home. And I was like, and this is the stuff that also needs to be shown or at least talked about, because it's like, don't make fresh salads all of the time. Sometimes dinner is a massive packet of crisps, and you know what? It's okay. And some shortbread. It's really good. Look at that. See it? Oh, it's got some of my hair on it. Gross. So that was dessert last night after a packet of crisps. And I nearly had one for breakfast, I'm not gonna lie, because I was so hungry waiting to start cooking. I was like, Rachel, you don't need to eat shortbread for breakfast. Make a sandwich. I was like, okay. Next question. How has your eating changed? How has your eating evolved since 2 years ago? And other new nuggets of wisdom you have to share with us. I'm trying to remember what I was eating like 2 years ago. That's how little I think about it. I don't know. I think I am more convenience focused at the moment, at this point in my life with my eating. And I don't mean convenience food like fast food necessarily with that, but my meals that I make on average are a lot simpler and faster because it's just not my main focus at the moment. I probably eat more processed foods, things like crisps and chocolate at this particular moment in time because of convenience as well. My concern with this question, while I understand it, is that as though what I'm eating is the point, because my way of eating day to day is not something to copy. Issue with it is that my relationship with food is about my relationship with food, not about what I'm actually eating. I'm hesitant to talk about what I eat too much in case it's perceived of, oh, well, Rachel's got a healthy relationship with food, and so I'll just copy what she eats, because that will not give someone a healthy relationship with food. Our relationship with food is about our appetite cues and our preferences and what's going on in our lives and how we feel about food and what we're using food for. We can't just copy someone else's way of eating. And I'm hesitant to sort of disclose too much about what I eat, as though it's something to model. My relationship with food might be something to model, but my way of eating certainly isn't. So maybe that's a little nugget of wisdom maybe that I can share. If I'm totally honest in my relationship with food, how that's evolved, I'm less interested in food at this particular point in my life. I'm more interested in other things. Sometimes I forget to eat and then regret that later on when I'm really hungry and I eat 3 Magnums in a row. So in an ironic spin, at this point in my life, I'm actually having to remind myself to regularly eat because I'm just currently less interested in food. It's obviously not about restriction and it's not something that I promote at all, but that's just me being honest, because my relationship with food and my way of eating is constantly evolving depending on what's going on in my life or where I am. I might be traveling, then I'm eating differently. So for me, that is a healthy relationship with food. Yeah, it's looking at the bigger picture. So I don't have a day where I eat 3 Magnums and think, oh my gosh, my relationship with food is a disaster. I don't think that. But after 2 weeks of a lot of nights realizing that I hadn't eaten enough and then getting hungry and then making more convenience food that didn't have a lot of thought into it, then in the bigger picture, I started looking at it like, maybe there's something that I want to kind of adapt here. And so I started incorporating more food earlier in the day. Having a healthy relationship with food very much requires us to look at the big picture rather than like the isolated eating moments. If I go to McDonald's, it's not something that I do very often at all, I'll be honest, I don't really like it. But if I go to McDonald's for dinner one day, it doesn't mean that I always eat McDonald's. It doesn't mean I've got a negative relationship with food, but there was a time in my life where if I ate McDonald's for dinner, it would be disastrous. I would catastrophize it. Like, oh, I'm so unhealthy. I can't believe I've done this. I'd feel guilty. I'd feel shameful. I would be so small picture. And now I have a very, very big picture view of my relationship with food. And I do make amendments. And my relationship with food isn't perfect because there's no such thing. And I'm often kind of reevaluating like, oh, is there anything that I want to change here, to support myself better? A healthy relationship with food is not a point to arrive at. It's not actually a goal or an outcome to achieve. It's a practice. So in my way of working with it, I think of it like a big skill. It's made up of lots of little skills that are then maintained, kind of like having good communication. I was talking to a client about this the other day who was so focused on doing the right things to develop a healthy relationship with food. She was so overly focused on that it was actually impacting her ability to develop one, because she was over analyzing things too much, which was taking her away from being peaceful around food. So a healthy relationship with food is not an outcome. It is a practice to learn and develop, and then is maintained for life. And it's certainly not a way of eating to model. It is absolutely not that. 1,500 people can have a healthy relationship with food, and they will all eat differently on different days, and they'll all eat differently to each other, and they all have a healthy relationship with food. It's like style. 1,500 people could have a good sense of style, and they will all dress differently. Oh, that looks so good. Yes. Guess what? More olive oil. People are going to start thinking I'm Jamie Oliver. Don't judge me for this. I would normally use fresh lemon, but I didn't have time to go to the shop, so it's bottled lemon. We'll pretend I've squeezed on fresh lemon. No, actually, we won't pretend. Because that's disingenuous. It's one of my absolute pet peeves, is the what I eat in a day videos, which are just not honest. And I know, because I've done it in the past, years and years ago. Like, oh, I totally just eat nutritious food all of the time. And, oh, I definitely just have one small bit of chocolate and then that satisfies me. It's like, bullshit. I highly doubt that that's true. So what's unusual about today as I'm cooking is I wouldn't normally spend 45 minutes making a one-off meal. If I was going to spend 45 minutes cooking, then I would definitely be batch cooking, something like a curry or a fish pie or lasagna, something like that I could, or even like a massive salad. Oh, I nearly forgot. Couscous. If in doubt, I roast up some vegetables with some kind of dressing and then add couscous, and then maybe some meat or fish, one or the other. And it's just really, really easy meal. But the couscous makes it. It's not the same without couscous. I'm showing this because this is coconut milk, and at the shops there's the low fat version and then the what I like to consider the good version. And before, I would only buy the low fat hummus, the low fat coconut milk, skimmed milk, and now it's all full fat everything. Because I personally prefer the taste and the satisfaction from full fat things. And again, people are different. It doesn't mean that it's right for everyone else. But I like a richness to my food, as I was explaining earlier. Ironically, I ate more when I was eating the low fat, unsatisfying versions of things than I do eating the food that I actually find satisfying. Maybe that's not ironic, but I wouldn't have believed that before. I would have been just like, oh, it's wasted calories. It's unnecessary calories. It's not that simple. And last but not least, the feta. Trying to think. A whole block of feta might be a bit too intense, but we'll see how we get on. Again, full fat feta for me personally. Now, some people might actually prefer the taste and not be fatty people, as I like to describe it. I'm a fatty person. I like just full fat everything, but not everyone else is going to be the same. So I'm that annoying person, apparently it's annoying, that would put a little bit back in the fridge because that bit is just that bit too much. It really annoys some people. Like, why can't you just finish it? That last little bit of ice cream. Why don't you just finish that last little bit? And it's like, well, because I'm done. So I don't want that last little bit. And I'm not going to force feed myself, even if it's only a mouthful of ice cream left. If I'm done, I'm done. And I honor that. But it really freaks some people out. Like, just finish it. No, thank you. You have no idea how long it took me to get over the I must finish everything on my plate. We're not bringing that back. Thank you. Okay, let's do this final question and then I'll use the bowl. When I'm having fun with friends, I don't feel the urge to binge. So that means I need to have fun or be entertained. What's being said here, if the implication is I binge because I'm not entertained, I think that would be massively oversimplifying it. Because if we even think about it from this point of view, does that mean that someone has to be entertained all of the time constantly? Otherwise, they're worried that they're going to have the urge to binge. And if that's the case, then that sounds like that would be an exhausting way to live. I don't think the urge to binge is as simple as a lack of entertainment. I think, like I was mentioning earlier, there's a lot that goes into having the urge to binge. Nevertheless, if it's been highlighted as, hey, I have less emotional eating urges and less urge to binge when I'm entertained, I think that's a massive win. Like, that's really important information. I don't think it's the whole picture, but I think it's a part of it. And so I think that's really amazing that this person has become aware of that. One thing that I will say on this topic is that there's a big work that we do with clients who are developing a healthy relationship with food surrounding identity and getting needs met and being fulfilled in life, regardless of what's happening backstage with eating, and building up a sense of identity. Who am I? What do I like? What don't I like? What people do I like to hang out with? What things do I like to do? What are my values? How can I support my values? And what are my needs? What needs do I have? What needs aren't being fulfilled? And how can I get those met? All of that is a big part, in my experience, of developing a healthy relationship with food, because it addresses directly a lot of the reasons behind the restriction, the negative body image, the emotional eating. It addresses all of those things directly, and then it sort of helps the emotional eating urges and the body image concerns and the restrictive urges to diminish a little bit on their own. It's not the whole picture. It's not just I'm going to figure out who I am and what I like and then job done, but it is a big part of the puzzle. But the focus can't be, in my experience, I'm going to go out and do more fun stuff so that I eat less. That doesn't tend to work, because the focus is still then on I want to eat less, which tends to make us want to eat more when that's our focus. So it's just, regardless what happens with my eating, doesn't matter. I've got these needs and I'm going to go and get them met, full stop. And we'll see what happens with the food. Right, so let's put this together, shall we? I'll take out these cute eggs. I'm going to do it over here. Okay. See what I mean? It just wouldn't be the same without the couscous. It would just be a bowl of vegetables and not much substance. You know what I mean? We're not on the keto diet here. You can't tell me that doesn't look good. This is thanks to my grandma. This is my grandma's style of cooking. This is. Okay, I'm going to head off now, but thank you so much for watching. And thank you for sending in your questions as well. If you have more questions that you want me to answer, then please just leave them in the comments below. They're very, very welcome. And if you're struggling with your relationship with food and you're interested in getting some help for that, then you're very welcome to head to our website and we can see if we're able to support you. Bye, lovelies.
Best thing ever. Asparagus.
Oh, I don't know about this, Vagina.
I'm so happy. I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Bye!